Wonderful. And we are live once again with amazing people. Yeah, and I was like laughing yesterday because I had missed so much talking to, doing these interviews and talking to the people in my circle, because I realized that I just know some fantastic people and they have such a wealth of knowledge and resources, and I'm learning so much all of the time. So it's wonderful to have you both on today. And Katlyn, you have been on before and we talked about homeschooling and such like, and we had such a great response that a lot of parents and teachers wanted to have questions. So I'm afraid I'm going to be firing questions at you both today.
That's perfect.
And Lucy, you haven't been on before, and we are very pleased to welcome you. And if you would like to do a little bit of background and an intro, that would be amazing.
Sure. I'm Lucy MacArthur, and Katlyn and I met many years ago in graduate school for our master's in Waldorf education. And a long time ago, we decided we should open a school together. And through what has happened with COVID, that just occurred naturally with us starting to help families transition into homeschooling and finding their own rhythms. So that's how she kind of came in, also worked with the mystery school. Katlyn was the one who brought me into mystery school as well. So we kind of interweave some of those practices, but Waldorf education is also based out of some aspects of the lineage, so it weaves together really beautifully.
Yeah, that's something that really amazes me when, when people are discussing their choices for their children's education. There is such a variety of options nowadays, and it's just lovely to know that there are things out there that can suit all, varieties of children, all different walks of life, from different cultures, from different backgrounds. And for us walking on the path, it's lovely to know that they're fellow initiates now using the Waldorf system and what have you, and we want to find out more about it. So Katlyn, may I fire the first question at both you and Lucy, because we've
Absolutely.
Katlyn, we know you.
Yeah, you do.
We do. Okay, so here's the first question. What is Waldorf homeschooling and how is it different to other approaches? What are the benefits of Waldorf approach to learning and education? And this is from Vicky.
Ooh, yay. I'm so glad that Vicky asked. So oftentimes when people start thinking about alternative methods of education, they start thinking about Waldorf, Amelia Reggio, or Montessori. And with Waldorf homeschooling, it's been so beautiful for Lucy and I to watch our current cohort of parents as they have been embracing this like rhythm and the cycles of education and bringing it really into their home and into their being. So it's more enlivened than like a textbook or like a certain amount of like things to do, but it becomes an enrichment in their children's lives. Yeah. Lucy, do you want to dive more into that?
Yeah, I mean, it really is a living education. Kind of what Katlyn touched on is it's working with not only the cycles of nature, but this breathing in and breathing out. So that's something we talk about with our families during the day, is to start to interweave activities that bring you inward and then activities that bring you outward, so that there's this breath that is continued from when you wake up until the end of the day. And that's that inward, outward ebb and flow. And that applies to the year as well. We do different things in regarding to like what season we're in. But we always want to have that aspect of just the breath. Like it's like a living, breathing thing, and it's not necessarily set. We have these really strong rhythms, but there's always flexibility. So you're working with the ebb and the flow rather than, it's like a solid ebb and flow. It works, but it's not like do this, and if it's not done that way, then it doesn't work. Each day looks a little different, but we're always working with that foundation.
I love that. So it's very alive. It's working with the child and parent in that moment in time, depending on whatever challenges or whatever joy or whatever is coming up. So it's enabling the family to embrace those moments rather than, okay, this is what we have to do, and this is, and then we can embrace the moments afterwards if we've done our work, kind of thing.
Yes.
I like that approach. I do like that approach. So the next question is if a good question to follow on. So then how does the Waldorf approach promote resilience in young children? And this is from Susan, because I know this is a hot topic right now, is resilience in young children. So how does that go? How does the system work in that sense?
Go ahead, Lucy. Take it away.
Well, it's really working with the understanding of the child itself. So in the Waldorf approach, we don't see a child as a brain, we see them as a whole human being. So working with their hands, working with their feeling life, their emotional life, and also obviously life. But when we have that basis, it's meeting them in all the ways that they need to be met. So one thing that I think about when I think of resilience is handwork, which sounds really strange, but we teach at a very young age the children how to knit. And I just want to walk you through the resilience of knitting because once you knit and once you're able to work and do all of that work and you have a missed stitch and you have to go back and undo all that work and then keep on going, there's a development of the will. And the will is really developed in the body first before the mind. And the children, especially in our program in Waldorf schools as well, like we wait to focus so heavily on the intellect, and we're building with that foundation of the body. So when I think of resilience, the first thing that came to my mind was handwork, but it's just developing that ability to keep on going and to have also joy with things. I think the biggest resilience is to have joy, and that also comes mostly from parents and teachers, is when we're modeling that we have joy in life and we can see all of these beautiful things in life, then it makes them want to grow up, where they're like, okay, maybe it is worth growing up and getting to where you got. I think joy is the biggest resiliency in the teaching aspect.
Yeah, so that really touches on like the how us as adults are with them as they're learning how to knit, right? and as they're going through like woodwork exercises and and other exercises working with the hands and creating their will. And for us as grown-ups to be with them and to be that steadfast, calm presence, because we have a greater capacity to hold them in that space. And then it's like studying the child and studying like, okay, so where's their point that they're going to be stretching themselves and, watching, and then also being able to, help them like redirect themselves when they're getting too hard on themselves. So like this is where that like spiritual training that we've had in the mystery school is so helpful to be able to bring ourselves back to center and in balance so that we can be a stronger force for our children and be that energy of love for them.
Yeah, I like that approach as well. And I can imagine that as a family, if we were to all sit down and do knitting, and knitting is something that I actually learned when I was younger, and I enjoyed it very much. I'm not a very accomplished knitter. Let me say, I won't be making you all hats and gloves and stuff for Christmas. Don't worry. I could do a scarf at best. But I can imagine that if we were all, sitting around and knitting, and doing this as a family piece, and then making things together as a family piece as well. And so you're demonstrating and showing the children from that practical aspect, rather than it's just the child doing it, or there's just, okay, this is what you're going to do to build your resilience. Well, oh, hang on a minute, maybe I could do that as a parent or as a teacher. And then, oh my goodness, we can all go through this process together, and isn't that much more powerful? So I'm guessing that, parents listening to this who perhaps are not ready to take that step into homeschooling, there are certainly things that they can do at home, and these extra activities would, be a way that they could build resilience for their own children. And what have you. And is that something that you do? You support parents that have children at school still, but they're kind of, wanting to go to the homeschooling route, but not quite there?
Yeah, we're branching out beginning in January and offering parent coaching calls, because we're seeing that's just to have someone in your corner. Right. That's especially right now, have another grown up to be like, how you doing? Okay, great. Yep. And, giving some guidance and support. So we have parent coaching calls, and then we're also offering after school activities, and that'll be focused around, watercolor painting, clay modeling, and knitting and handwork, and movement. So we'll be focusing in, and those are activities that they can bring into their lives as a whole family, because children. Rudolph Steiner talks about how children from a very, very young age, from birth until at least 7, they're sense organs. They're just giant sense organs. So they want to be with us, and they want to they want to imitate us. So exactly what you're hitting on, Kate, is that if you're doing the work together as a family, be it knitting or cooking or what it is, they like to be around us. And so it's like creating that mood at home to have that be a practice.
And that's something that we, for next semester, we will have one day a week where it's going to be something that is specifically for parents who are having their children in whatever schooling they're having them in. So we're going to be starting off with knitting, because knitting is just the basics. And what I love about knitting in particular, and kind of cultivating those activities in the family, is once you teach a child how to knit, I mean, wow, how many scarves are you going to get for Christmas? You know what I mean? It just, it opens up all of these doors. And I just remember, for me, when I learned how to knit, my parents transitioned into a Waldorf school, and beforehand I was watching television, and after I was knitting. And I made them so many scarves. They were like, we don't want any more scarves. That's okay. But that's also something to think about. If your child is on screen all day for school, depending on where you are or how much, having activities, it's not replacing and saying no screens, it's giving them something else. And children have that sense of like, they want to be useful, they want to be helpful, and they want to be capable. And knitting is actually a practical art where it's like you're learning how to keep yourself warm. And that's something that Waldorf education also really focuses on, particularly in the 3rd grade, but that feeling of being capable in all aspects of life, not just thinking, but woodworking, like how to build a house, how to build a structure for yourself, how to keep yourself warm, how to feed yourself, because these are all skills that, I mean, they seem kind of obvious, but it does have that inner sense of confidence. And also, when you were talking about resilience, that understanding of like, I know I can do this, like I can rely on myself.
I think that is the most important thing, is learning how to love yourself. And if you can't feed yourself correctly, if you can't wash yourself, look after your environment and perhaps make your clothes or whatever it is, and it's the very basis of nurturing yourself from a young age. And in England, in the UK, we used to have those types of classes. But sadly, they have mainly phased out now. I certainly remember going to cooking class and learning how to sew on a sewing machine. They don't do any of that now. Maybe in some kind of some kind of specialist areas. Girls were encouraged to do woodwork as well at our school, so we had woodwork. But again, I believe that isn't as readily available now. So it's fascinating how these old style methods were teaching us how to live in the world, how to nurture ourselves, how to nurture each other, how to take care of ourselves. And since those have phased out, I've noticed that the younger generation don't know how to do that, and it has had a detrimental effect, I feel, on their mental well-being, because they're having to rely on somebody else to do the cooking and the cleaning and this and then that, and then, like you say, they think they can't do it for themselves, so.
And that also creates a foreign environment. If you don't know how something is made, then it becomes foreign to you. Where that's another thing is more in the upper grades and in high school, you're encouraged to take things apart and so see how things work, and like making your own clothes, making a house. When you're in those structures, then you're like, oh, I know what that is. I know how to, like a button, I know how that's sewed on. And it kind of creates this oneness with your environment where you feel connected and the world isn't as scary. It's not strange to you because you have that connection of like, and even, I mean, I love these examples because even if you teach a child how to knit and they forget, they still know that at one point they knew how to do that. So it creates that sense of like, I could try that again later on. I could do that.
Yeah, and it's saying so some of the other questions that we're talking about skills, but one of the other questions was going to homeschooling. In school we have this ability to learn social skills. So if we're being homeschooled, how does the Waldorf system support children's social skills when they're being homeschooled? How does that work?
So we've experienced this in a couple different ways. So we've seen how first of all, it's like we bring the social setting into home, and so then it's how do we actually relate to one another? How are we communicating? How are we functioning together? And that's been a beautiful foundational piece for our each of our families to be able to take the time to examine and go, okay, so let's rework some things. And then, when it comes to, and from that, we've seen so much growth from the children because there's this brewing harmony that is within the family. And then when we have social, from like peer support, it's been kind of surprising over Zoom how much support and socializing we can build together as a group. And we have so in our homeschooling setting, we have morning meeting that we all come on in the morning, and we all have songs and movement and verse that we do all together. So we greet the day all together, and then we break off, and then we come back together in the afternoon. So we have that kind of that bookend piece. And now our families are at the point where they're hosting morning meetings like together on their own without Lucy and I. And we've been getting videos of watching the children like hosting it together. So they're building these bonds, which is really, really beautiful. And it's nice that there's a age difference which can be really helpful and healing for both the older and the younger children.
Yeah, I like this point because here in the UK, we have just gone into our second lockdown again. So that means most shops and what have you are closed. Schools at the moment are allowed to go ahead, but there could be a time where children are being isolated because here in the UK, if you come into contact, the older children more so. If you come into contact with anybody that's had COVID, then you have to isolate for 14 days. So there is a period, and my stepson, who's 17, just had to go through this. He went to college only for a couple of weeks after that long period off, and he had to isolate again for 2 weeks. And you can imagine all of his friends are at college, and he then has to, it's very hard on their mental well-being. And this is something that I feel will be very useful for everybody right now, is, if we could put into place some kind of morning meeting and evening meeting just for everybody, because that makes sense to me. It's like, okay, let's connect in, let's make sure everybody's okay, and it's something to get up for and something to look forward to in the evening as well. So I'm talking to parents and teachers and everybody out there, in your groups, why not take up on this opportunity and do a morning meeting and an evening meeting? I know we have schools going at the moment, but not all children are able to go to school. Some families are at risk and all the rest of it. So this is a great suggestion. I really love that.
Yeah, it's been really beautiful to to see, like, our parents will come on with, right, for a morning meeting, and then when we have our, we say afternoon specials, but and then the parents around with, and so there's that camaraderie that's been building, which has been it's been so helpful right now as everyone's at home. So yeah.
So there's another question that's just come in. How do you manage boundaries and behavior? And I'm presuming this is for the children that are homeschooled, obviously.
Yeah, so that's been a huge part of our work working with parents, is shifting from that idea of how do we manage behavior to prevention. And the biggest prevention that we have is our foundational work, which is working with the rhythm. So part of that is saying, okay, what is our day? What is our daily rhythm? What is our weekly rhythm? And how do we, again, each family has a different one. So that's the thing, is we always encourage them, like, for whatever schedule that you want to have it work for you. But then once you have it established, try and hold that as much as you can, because there's this level of security that happens. Because I always try to paint that picture of, like, imagine if you woke up and you had no idea what you were doing each day. And then somebody told you, now do this. And you're like, wait, what? And now do this. And you're like, whoa. And so having that consistency of, especially over time, like maybe the first month is a transition, but over time, a child just knows, we do this and we do this and we do this and we do this. And it isn't incumbent on an adult to tell them. They have that in their body, in their own personal rhythm. They've built up their habit body. So that's a huge aspect of it. And then part of it also is, again, going back to adults. So looking at how we carry ourselves. Are we holding ourselves in a way that isn't worthy of imitation? And we do also a lot of speech work, because there's so much that is carried in the voice to children. And so we're trying to work with parents as well. And, like, how are you speaking? And you can have the same result happen. And you can say, and I gave the example once of, like, sit down versus sit down. And it's the same thing, you know what I mean? But having that awareness in ourselves as well, to be like, how we need to have ultimate control over how we speak. There can be nothing that happens. And I mean, nothing. Things get broken, things da da da. You're still calm, because they're still imitating you. So if you want them to be different, you have to look at how you are. And that can be kind of strange to, like, it's like that same thing of, like, it's really easy to be like, they're not. And then you're like, oh, the three fingers back of, like, oh no, I'm not. And maybe it's that you're tired. So that's part of it also, is, like, when we're working with parents, is, like, creating that foundation for themselves where, like, are you getting enough sleep? Like, are you delegating this to somebody else? Because as parents, like, you are the cornerstone, and you are the most important piece of the puzzle. So that, when you're talking about self-care, it really is about parents making sure that their needs are tended to, because they're giving so much to the children. So it's funny. It's been a funny shift for us and also for parents to realize it's like, oh wait, I'm really important. Taking care of me is really important because it's a trickle down effect. However you are, it just trickles down. So yeah, that's been a major piece. And Caitlin is also, we've talked about this where if you mean something, say it, hold, and wait, and like visualize the outcome that you want. You don't have to say it many times, just be stalwart, and magical things will happen.
So Caitlin knows I'm a big fan of this approach because Mini Me Yoga, we work with the little children right from the word go about the power of the words. And we show them through the Dr. Emoto and the charging up of the water, but the messages is each, your words and carry a vibration and that changes the very cells in our body, and what, so as of course, as Caitlin knows, that the messages are really for parents and teachers and not for the children, because we forget how we are talking to one another, or we forget that we might be raising our voice, or we forget that our voice might be very monotone and it's very boring, we're not engaging people, it's like we have to be a bit excited about things, and compassionate, and have fun and magic, and I'm a big fan of that. And yeah, and I truly believe from the bottom of my heart that if children will just copy what we are doing, and that happens in kids yoga. It's like you can teach a group of children from all different languages, backgrounds. There's no communication by words, but if you do, they will do. And it's the perfect example, and that's what happens in life. And I love that. Yes, when you're pointing the finger, it's often coming from us, but we don't realize it. And I think that's such a valuable piece. Is okay. Let's look at how the children are, how they're behaving, and then let's look at us, because ultimately we could probably change that within a few seconds or a few minutes and calm the whole situation down. I love that. I love that part. Let's have a look at, another question. I know we're coming up to the end of time. Let's try and get this question in, because how can parents continue the Waldorf approach in the home learning environment? We talked about knitting and such like, but what are the other ways that parents can continue the Waldorf approach?
There's a few books that we recommend to everyone that we've talked to. One of them is called The Kingdom of Childhood, and they are that's on Steiner Books, which is now on Amazon, so you can find it on Amazon, and it's also on audio. I think it's steineraudio.org, Luce, right? So starting off with that gives a huge perspective into exactly that. Rudolph Center calls it the kingdom of childhood, and what it is, and our place in it as adults. Lucy and I are also going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks with more introduction workshops and things that cover a large gamut of, introducing yourself into Waldorf education and bringing it into the home. So, so we'll have those out definitely before the new year. So, yeah.
And in terms of activities to do, like what can't you do? I mean, there's a lot of it is kind of just, I would also just challenge people to think, okay, how can you weave lessons into everyday life? So that could be through building something and working with measurement. It could be cooking something and again working with measurement. But like kind of looking at life through new eyes, of seeing, like going out. We just were looking at sacred geometry in nature, and then doing sacred geometry in the home, so as an art project. So there's so many things that you can do, and some of them have been done in Waldorf schools for a really long time, but it's also, I think the key point of Waldorf education is innovation. And that's why there are not a lot of textbooks. There's a lot of indications, but it really comes from your personal interest. So if there's something that you're really excited about, create it. And of course, there's ways to bring certain things. There's aspects that can be honed in bringing it the way that you want to, but it really comes from the individual and your individual work.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So can we, we'll put perhaps the names of the books in the comments. And then, so people from around the world will be able to have access to your services. And if parents are out there right now and they're thinking, okay, I'm not sure how stable school is going to be, and with all these things that are going on, maybe my child needs that routine, and maybe now I can work from home, maybe I can do the homeschooling, so you'll be able to support them through that. And I know we're in the UK and there's a bit of a time difference, but still that could be possible, which would be great. And also having the workshops so that people who perhaps are not going to take their children out of school, but they want to do something to support, then they're going to be able to look at these workshops and work through them and have that support, which would be amazing. So can we make sure that we put all the website links and everything in the comments so that people can get in touch with you, and maybe they can be updated as to when that is coming out? Because I know a lot of people are going to want to have this information. I think also there's a lot of teachers out there that are also looking for extra support and skills, because obviously these are unprecedented times, and we how can we work with children in a different way, I think is the definitely on the lips of all the teachers that I have spoken to. We know that we can't continue going the way that we are, so this is going to be fabulous. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful, and I hope everyone listening out there get in touch with Katlyn and Lucy if you have any questions. I know they're always eager to help and to share, and these up and coming workshops sound amazing, so I shall look forward to those myself as well.
Thank you so much, Kate, for having us on. And yes, if we'll drop in all of our links, and people can follow us or like us on Facebook at Wellspring Homeschooling. Follow us on Instagram, and we'll keep everyone up on our upcoming workshops and our apprenticeship programs. And we have different tiers this January. So whatever anyone needs, we're here for your support.
That's amazing. So could you give us one parting top tip for the parents, one for the teachers out there? If there's anything, one parting top tip that you can give and share with us.
Lucy, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mean, mine might sound very simple, but whatever works for you in your mind, bring you into center, do that. Take 5 minutes that time that's set aside to make sure that you have come into your inner light and that you can see all the goodness that you're doing, and also to see the children that you're working with for all of their goodness, and hold that image of their goodness and light when you're working with
I
them.
love that.
That's it. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, lots of love to you both, and I know we'll be speaking soon. Take care for now.
Yes. Thank you, Kate. Bye.